Well, as you know, Westlands is incredibly efficient. We use almost 100% drip, as we can't spare the water. The water system, Mr. Gray, as you know, because we worked last year on the groundwater legislation and the bond, the water system is very complex because we have areas that have the ability to store groundwater and areas like west side of the San Joaquin Valley where we don't have any ability to store groundwater. I think the real issue is when, not whether, but when can you take water out of the delta that previously wasn't considered to be beneficially used by the mere fact you put it into storage and do it. Our position is when the system is strained, when we haven't even done in-stream flows that the water board is proposing to do, which raises concerns for all of us, when we have a 0% allocation, there's no excess water in the system to put underground to store. There are times when the delta is in excess, where there are enough flows for the environment and for the state and CVP contractors. Those are the times when we think we would say you can not only store additional water in the delta, but if we had conveyance and we had a place where we could operate pumps or gravity flow, we could take more water as well. It would solve both of our problems. And so, to me, that's where the solution lies. So it's not a question of whether we should look for solutions for additional groundwater storage. I think it's a question of when it's appropriate in the system to do it.
So we could characterize your comments as there are appropriate times for groundwater recharge as beneficial use, but it has to be taken in the context of the entire system.
And our letter reflects the three issues we raised that we think, first, we have to have the in-stream flows done to understand some of the relationship. Second, it couldn't adversely affect the operations of the CVP and State Water Project. When we're releasing water for fish and for outflows, we want to make sure that water isn't taken and not for that purpose, because otherwise we're in a continuous cycle of having to release. So with several amendments that we suggested in our letter, yes, Mr. Gray, we could see a circumstance where it would be appropriate. Yes. You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments from the members? All right. Ms. Eggman, thank you for your bill, and I think that the amendments that you take are on the right path for addressing a lot of the issues that have been raised today. Would you like to close?
Yep. I would just say I appreciate the committee's consideration. This is a very complicated issue, as everybody has pointed out, but certainly our groundwater recharge is one of the most important things that we do, especially with some of the concerns that people have raised, the cost of surface water, transfer, everything that has to occur. We need to be able to recharge our aquifers in a way that makes sense for everybody.
Great. Please call the roll.
Do pass as amended to Appropriations Committee. Levine.
Aye.
Levine, aye. Bigelow.
No.
Bigelow, no. Dolly.
Not voting.
Dolly, not voting. Dodd.
Aye.
Dodd, aye. Gaines. Garcia.
Aye.
Garcia, aye. Gomez.
Aye.
Gomez, aye. Gray. Harper. Gray, aye. Harper. Lopez.
Aye.
Lopez, aye. Mathis. Medina.
Aye.
Medina, aye. Rendon.
Aye.
Rendon, aye. Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas, aye. Williams.
Your bill is out.
The bill is out.
Your bill is out. You're successful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Just catch our breath real quick.
Okay, the consent file. AB 938 do pass consent. AB 939 do pass consent. AB 298 do pass consent. AB 501 do pass consent to Judiciary Committee. AB 1463 do pass consent to Business and Professions Committee.
Move the consent.
Levine?
Aye.
Levine, aye. Bigelow?
Aye.
Bigelow, aye. Dolly?
Aye.
Dolly, aye. Dodd?
Aye.
Dodd, aye. Gaines? Garcia?
Aye.
Garcia, aye. Gomez? Gray?
Aye.
Gray, aye. Harper? Lopez?
Aye.
Lopez, aye. Mathis? Medina?
Aye.
Medina, aye. Rendon?
Aye.
Rendon, aye. Ridley Thomas. Ridley Thomas, aye. Williams. Consent calendar's out.
Great, thank you, members. I would like to call Mr. Perea up. Members, I think you may have noticed on today's agenda that we had a special order of business to address a flurry of bills that address groundwater issues. And I think that this is a year that many of us wanted to address them, try to figure out, particularly in this time of drought and with everything that we have going on, what can we do to have beneficial impacts for California. And so I really want to just express my appreciation to Mr. Perea, who's been working with many stakeholders, and including the committee, on trying to develop a bill that addresses many issues. So he is going to be providing some testimony about his bill. We're actually going to take it up for a vote at a future hearing, but he's done substantial work on it, and I wanted to take advantage of the special order of business because of the greater narrative of the work that we're doing on groundwater and how Mr. Perea's bill fits into all of that. I did not want him to miss that opportunity to insert that into today's discussion. Mr. Perea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words on our bill, AB 617, in mock-up form. As the chairman stated, there won't be a vote on the bill today, but the bill does attempt to address several issues that stakeholders from throughout the state, my district, have brought up as they seek to implement the groundwater management bills that were passed by this body last year. And so what I thought I'd do is, since we are not taking a vote, is just quickly run through some of the more some of the bigger provisions within the bill. And we do have our sponsors that are here today that can answer any technical questions that any members may have. So I'll start. Let me begin by just running through the provisions that we're seeking to find consensus on. First provision in print, which is Section 3, would allow mutual water systems to participate in the groundwater management agencies. One thing that, I don't know if this is unique to my district, but I know that one thing we see a lot in the Valley and many other rural areas is that mutual water companies provide water services where others do not. I have several disadvantaged communities that are served by mutual water agencies, and they should be able to participate so that we do not exclude various areas throughout rural communities. The next has to deal with protecting water rights. If extraction allocations occur, these allocations should not be interpreted to be a person's final determination of rights to extract groundwater. In order for SGMA to go smoothly, affected persons need to be assured their water rights will not be threatened. Next, in sections 2, 6, and 10, would clarify definitions throughout SGMA that a tool for recharging groundwater by locals is using surface water in lieu of pumping groundwater. And so that's an important thing that many of our local water districts or water folks wanted to clarify. Section 4 would just allow for public-private partnerships, just another way of trying to bring in new capital in building projects. Section 5 would make state agencies also subject to SGMA. I don't know if this is unique to the Central Valley, but I represent a district that has a lot of state prisons, and I think, Mr. Gray, you might have some prisons either in your district or close to you. We wanted to make sure that most of these prisons are located in the middle of thousands of acres of farmland. So we wanted to make sure that as farmers are subject to these, we also wanted to make sure that state agencies are also subjects and still be pulling from the same basin. Sections 7, 9, and 11 would protect good actors within a basin from being penalized for the actions of others who are not complying. These provisions would safeguard entities that are working in good faith to adopt and implement sustainable groundwater management plans, and clarify the state should only penalize those that have not worked collectively with the rest of the basin. I would just say that in my district, as we seek to implement this bill, Fresno County is very unique in a lot of ways in that we have so many different issues in terms of groundwater between east side and west side, and even within east side there are different water issues that we want to make sure that that if there are individuals or groups who decide not to participate with the collective, that those who are participating are not hindered because of those that still may want to fight last year's fight. Section 8 would clarify that the formation of a GSA shall not be subject to CEQA. This, I think, is going to be just more clarifying. Remember, this is not project specific, but more about the formation of GSA. There's some concern out there that the formation might be subject to CEQA. I know there's some debate back and forth as to whether or not that's the case. So we think we can fix that by just clarifying and making sure that it's clear. So that's the last of the major amendments that we're seeking to move in this bill. I want to thank the chairman. I want to thank the committee for working closely with our office, with our stakeholders in trying to find a pathway forward. Unfortunately, I was not able to support the groundwater legislation last year, but that doesn't mean I don't want it to work. And so now we are in a position of trying to make these work as best as we can for the constituents that I represent. And so I will end there. I know, Mr. Chairman, you're going to take a vote on these measures in the next week or two. So we can, happy to answer any questions today by members of the committee, but just know that we are working closely with stakeholders, working closely with the committee, trying to ensure that the intent of the things we're trying to do match the language that we're proposing before this body and before the full assembly, should it make it that far. And so we do have our sponsors here that can answer a few questions should there be any. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Perea. And we weren't really intending to have witnesses provide testimony at this point, but if there are some specific questions that you'd like to bring them up for, that's fine with me. I would like to open this up to members. And Mr. Bigelow, you have a question or a comment?
It's mostly a comment, and it's a huge thank you to the author for his willingness to work on a number of these amendments and the language, and in particular working with my office and my staff to make sure we address the plethora of needs through your bill. Also being one of those representatives who does have prisons within his district, recognizing that component is also very valuable. So I just want to give you a lot of praise for your efforts on this particular bill, and thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments from committee? I do want to echo Mr. Bigelow's comments. San Quentin State Prison is the largest water user in Marin County, and so it's often forgotten. It's something we just drive by and we don't really notice that it's there. And so it's something for us all to remember as we're trying so hard to conserve water, make sure that we have it for the resources for the things that the state really needs to do. And I want to just thank Mr. Perea for your leadership on this issue. This is a complex area of law.
It is.
It's a new area of law. And so we're going to get the analysis to members as soon as we can to make sure that everyone has the information that they need to fully grapple with it and support this as it goes through. So thank you, Mr. Perea.
Right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Next, we'll call up Mr. Salas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I present before you AB 936, but first I want to say thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to your staff. Appreciate the support and the assistance with this measure. And I do want to first begin by saying I will accept all of the committee's amendments.
Second.
All right. With that, I'll just say thank you, members, and I will say AB 936 allows local groundwater projects that are ineligible for state funding due to noncompliance with groundwater monitoring requirements to become eligible if the project for which the funding is requested includes actions to correct the noncompliance. And with that, I do have a couple of folks in support where they can give examples, if need be, of why this is needed.
Mr. Chairman and Member Bob Reed, on behalf of the Valley Ag Water Coalition, in support. Establishing a groundwater monitoring system can be very expensive, especially if you don't have a sufficient number of public agency wells or private wells where the owners agree to cooperate with groundwater level monitoring information. Drilling a well can be anywhere from $300,000 to $1 million. And so if you have to have a lot of these in order to adequately monitor an area, it's a real bar against those disadvantaged communities and rural areas. So we very much appreciate the committee's support of this measure.
Jennifer Capitolo from Nossaman. I'm doing some grant writing consulting for the County of Monterey, and for many years now, the County of Monterey has not been eligible for funding from the IRWMP program because they were not cash gem compliant, and so we put together this bill idea initially and started working towards cash gem compliance. And fortunately, I will say, right before the executive order came out, we were able to gain cash gem compliance, but we did miss out on many of years of IRWM funding because we couldn't get cash gem compliant. And it's not easy, and the county had to commit a lot of funding resources to be able to gain cash gem compliance. So for the disadvantaged communities that are still not in cash gem compliance, this is a good measure that will help them get to that place.
Great. Thank you very much for your testimony. And I see some people who may be eager to testify in support. So please list your name, your organization, and your position.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. Whitney Wiley with the Association of California Water Agencies in support.
Kathy Mannion, RCRC, representing rural counties, here in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, we'll take it back to the committee. Any members have any comments? All right, thank you. There is a motion. Would you like to close?
Respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Great. We'll take the roll.
Do pass as amended to Appropriations Committee. Levine? Aye. Levine, aye. Bigelow? Aye. Bigelow, aye. Dolly? Aye. Dolly, aye. Dodd? Dodd, aye. Gaines? Garcia? Gomez? Gray? Aye. Gray, aye. Harper? Lopez? Aye. Lopez, aye.
You ready, Frank?
Mathis? Medina?
Aye.
Medina, aye. Rendon?
Aye.
Rendon, aye. Ridley Thomas? Aye. Ridley Thomas, aye. Williams?
Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members.
Great. All right, Mr. Bigelow. Yeah, for the special order business, absolutely. So we'll take members first on special order business before the later stuff. Mr. Bigelow, at your pleasure.
Let me say, members, thank you, and Mr. Chair, thank you very much. If you will, I'll start in order, going 452, 453, 454. I would like to waive presentation on 455. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm here today to present AB 452, which establishes a groundwater regulation subaccount within the Water Rights Fund. Currently, the Water Board assesses fees, and they are deposited into the Water Rights Fund, which includes revenues from fees paid by water rights holders, fines, and penalties. These fees provide funding for groundwater investigations, which are approved through this fund. These fees are intended to recover the costs to the State Water Resource Control Board incurred conducting investigations, hearings, enforcements, and monitoring of groundwater basins. Let me be clear. AB 452 does not create a new fund. It does not impose a new fee. AB 452 simply creates a subaccount within the fund these monies are currently deposited into to avoid any confusion as to how these funds should be dispersed. The intent of AB 452 is simple. It is imperative the integrity of the Water Rights Fund remains solid and the money gets used for its intended purposes. If there are any questions, I have with me Mr. Reed to answer, and any comments.
Mr. Reed, did you want to give any comments?
Yes. Briefly, Mr. Chairman, Bob Reed with Reed Government Relations on behalf of the Valley Ag Water Coalition. I would stress respectfully that the bill does not limit the State Board's ability to administer and enforce the groundwater plans. In fact, the governor and the legislature has appropriated positions and funding to make sure that the board has adequate funding initially to begin its process of guidelines and regulations. I think it's really important, though, that from an accounting perspective, that these surface water right permit and license fees be separately accounted for from the groundwater fees and penalties. For just the very fact that it's going to be easier for the legislature, especially in the budget committees, to provide oversight over the two different programs. Yes, commingling may make sense if you're looking at water being the same, whether it's surface or groundwater, but you're not going to be able to have proper oversight over budget unless you can see where the groundwater money is going and where the surface water money is going in order to judge whether the state board is appropriately carrying out its duties, and therefore we request an aye vote.
Any other witnesses in support? Please state your name, your organization, and your position.
Members of the committee, Kathy Mannion, RCRC, also here in support. Thank you.
Whitney Wiley with Aqua, support.
All right. Any witnesses in opposition?
Good morning, Chair, Committee. Kyle Jones of Sierra Club, California, in opposition. The way we read the bill, we believe AB 452 restricts the Water Board's abilities to use water rights funds wherever they're needed. The Board needs to fulfill its enforcement duties wherever possible, regardless of whether the water is surface or groundwater. And without this enforcement, we don't believe there will be effective implementation of SGMA where needed to secure California's groundwater supplies for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Debbie Orrs with Community Water Center, in opposition.
Jennifer Clary, Clean Water Action, in opposition.
Phoebe Seaton, Leadership Council, in opposition.
Bianca Brow, Friends of the River, opposition.
Great. Seeing no other testimony, any comments from members? Okay, and I believe that there was a motion. I will just say that I share a lot of the concerns of the opposition to this. I don't believe that there's an oversight problem, but there is probably ultimately a problem with the Water Board being able to enforce what its job is to do, which creates further complications. And at this point in time, I'm not sure that this is when we want to be limiting their ability to do their job. So I unfortunately have to oppose the bill. But I believe there was a motion already on the floor made and a second. So we'll go and close. Oh, would you like to close, Mr. Bigelow?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the sentiment and your concerns, as many of those who registered some opposition. I did want to make it really clear that under Senate Bill 1168 and Assembly Bill 1739 and Senate Bill 1319, they paid a great deal of attention to the detail of differentiating groundwater and surface water. So the intent would have be that they were most concerned about the groundwater, since that was what the bill was all about. And so we would want to make sure that all of those funds that are being generated through fees, fines, or penalties would be remaining under the control of that groundwater sub-account that would be created through this legislation. I think it would be important to be able to recognize that if we take and dilute the revenues that are being generated from groundwater and move them to maybe over to surface water or other purposes, then there wouldn't be any money remaining to be able to address this historic groundwater legislation that was passed last year. So I would encourage the members to support this bill and keep the money where it was intended purposed. Thank you. I encourage an aye vote.
Do pass to Appropriations Committee. Levine?
No.
Levine, no. Bigelow?
Aye.
Bigelow, aye. Dolly? Aye. Dolly, aye. Dodd? Dodd, no. Gaines? Garcia? Gomez? Gray? Gray, aye. Harper?
Aye.
Harper, aye. Lopez? No. Lopez, no. Mathis? Medina?
No.
Medina, no. Rendon? Ridley Thomas?
Aye.
Ridley Thomas, aye. Williams?
No.
Williams, no.
3. You need 3 more votes. We'll hold the roll open for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so next bill, please.
Not a problem. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Before I begin, I would like to thank the chair and the committee staff for working so closely with my office to move this bill along. I'm here today to present AB 453, a bill that will provide local water agencies flexibility during a frantic and daunting time. AB 453 would authorize an agency to amend an existing groundwater management plan so that it may serve as an alternative plan under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA, or to enable an agency to improve groundwater management until groundwater sustainability plan is formally adopted in either 2020 or 2022. Mr. Chairman, I would eagerly just request an aye vote.
Thank you. Is there any other testimony?
Mr. Chairman and members, Bob Reed again on behalf of the Valley Ag Water Coalition. Briefly, SGMA authorizes an AB 3030 plan to be relied on as an alternative to a groundwater sustainability plan, and SGMA provides new authority to local agencies who have adopted an AB 3030 plan to impose fees on groundwater extraction and to collect data and information relating thereto. This bill simply clarifies SGMA that an AB 3030 plan can be amended, and this is very important, not only because it will be necessary for such a plan to be an alternative, but we can actually begin groundwater management in a more aggressive manner well ahead of these 2020 and 2022 timelines, so we would respectfully request an aye vote.
Other testimony?
Thank you. Again, Whitney Wiley with the Association of California Water Agencies in support.
And Kathy Mannion, RCRC, also in support.
Good morning, Lauren Hajic on behalf of California Citrus Mutual, California Cotton Growers Association, and California Cotton Ginners Association in support.
Good morning, Danny Merkley, California Farm Bureau, in support.
Dennis Albion on behalf of California Grain and Feed, California Seed, and Almond Hullers and Processors Association. Support.
That's an important part. Any any opposition would like to testify?
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Clary. I'm the Water Policy Analyst for Clean Water Action, and I regret to say that I must oppose this bill. I want to clarify, there's already a process in SGMA to determine whether an existing groundwater management plan is SGMA compliant, and DWR is developing regulations for that. Also, while there's a deadline for adopting a sustainable groundwater management plan, there's nothing that says you can't adopt it early. So it's not clear to me that we have a need to change the existing groundwater legislation to say you can change an existing plan. If your existing plan is groundwater compliant, you're going to be able to transfer it over to SGMA and you'll be fine. If it's not SGMA compliant, you should be working on an appropriate plan in the first place. And can I say I'm a little bit stressed today because it was so hard to pass this legislation, and there's a lot of it I don't like, but this like nitpicking, is it going to go on till 2020 or 2022 or 2040? So it's just a little bit stressed. I don't want to lay it all in this bill because I want to spread it evenly over all the bills. Thank you.
Any other testimony?
Kyle Jones of Sierra Club, California, in opposition.
What was that woman's name? I like her.
Bianca Brow, Friends of the River, opposition.
Debbie Orrs for Community Water Center and Leadership Council in opposition.
Great. Seeing no other testimony, I do want to comment on Ms. Clary's points. One is she in a sense accurately reflected a little bit about the special order of today's business, which is we have a lot of bills trying to address groundwater, and I don't know necessarily if any of us would want to characterize it exactly the way that she did, but obviously it's something that people in California are trying to address. We have this law. How do we make sure that it works properly and does what we intended it to do? And that's the legislature's role. is to try to address that. Sometimes we agree, and sometimes we don't. But it's important at least to have that conversation. And so I'm grateful that again that we're actually having that. Sometimes I think the legislature has been criticized for not looking back as we move forward to make sure that things are working and saying, hey, yeah, you know what, it is working, so we can keep on moving forward. Or maybe there are opportunities to make adjustments. She did have a little bit of a point that I'd love for the author just to address about, how do you make changes on plans as they're moving forward, and, how do you kind of stop this continual amending process?